You mentioned some of them earlier, but there have been literally dozens of volumes written on McDonaldization, covering everything from, as you mentioned, the military, police systems, jobs, the sex industry, church.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about this work that's been done?
I feel very good about it. I've written a lot of books in my life, and one never knows what the impact of those are going to be. And I think that it's gratifying that on the one hand, the book has had this profound effect on generation of college students who've read it in the United States. But simultaneously, in the United States, but especially outside of the United States, it has had this powerful intellectual influence where people take the idea and want to think about the university from that point of view, or the healthcare system from that point of view. And, I must say that having been used to writing a lot of books that failed, to write one that was successful was a surprise. But to write one that was successful both in terms of undergraduates and altering at least the way some of them think, but also then inspiring academics to do research in that tradition has been very gratifying.
I think the book has certainly done that. Along those lines, Alan Bryman recently authored a book called The Disneyization of Society. Can you tell us your feelings on that book and what do you think it adds to McDonaldization?
That was gratifying in itself. Bryman was influenced and I think is a big fan of McDonaldization, and has in many places sought to compare and contrast Disneyization to McDonaldization. I think it's an interesting book, but I don't think that it has caught a process that has been as powerful in its impact as has McDonaldization. And I suspect that Bryman would recognize that himself. I mean, I don't think there's any debate that we have seen this process of Disneyization that he describes, but I don't think it has had anywhere near the kind of profound impact on the larger society, or as profound an impact on academic work as the McDonaldization argument has. I mean, that's not to put it down. I think it's he's written several articles on it and eventually a book on it, and I think it's good, interesting stuff.
Morgan Spurlock has had a huge hit with his movie Super Size Me. How do you feel about that film?
Well, everybody assumed, and I think I assumed before I saw it, that I was going to like it. And the irony is that although it might have had the effect that I would like, which is to cause people to pause and think about eating this food, I didn't like the movie because, I really thought he was unfair to McDonald's. I mean, it's one of the rare occasions in which I found myself in a position of defending McDonald's rather than critiquing it. But the idea that one ate nothing for 30 days but this food, and then talks about all the adverse effects that it's had on his health, McDonald's would never urge people, even in their wildest dreams, to eat nothing but that food. And I suppose if he had then sort of taken another 30 days and eaten nothing but Taco Bell, and another 30 days and eaten nothing but Chinese food or pizza or whatever, I mean, you did kind of a controlled experiment, and then see in which case he was worse off in terms of health. And if he could then show that he was worse off because he ate McDonald's for 30 days than Chinese food or pizza or whatever, I'd be more convinced by his argument. But I thought it was, as I say, unfair to McDonald's.
Eric Schlosser's book, Fast Food Nation, could be considered in many ways to be a rival to your own work. First of all, how do you feel about that book? And second of all, what advantages, if any, do you think McDonaldization has over that book? Or what advantages does that book have over McDonaldization?
Yeah. Schlosser contacted me before that book was published and acknowledges somewhere in that book that he was influenced by reading The McDonaldization of Society. I mean, the truthful answer is that at some level resent might be too strong, but let's use that. Resent the success of that book. I mean, after all, that's a book that has sold millions and millions of copies in the United States and around the world, continues to be a bestseller, led to a movie, a bad movie, but a movie, Fast Food Nation. And Schlosser has succeeded wildly in a much broader arena than I've succeeded in, which is a kind of a narrow academic kind of arena. And while I've profited obviously economically from McDonaldization, he's profited much more from Fast Food Nation. So, at one level, I would have liked the economic tables to have been turned. And, on the other hand, he's a journalist, and I mean, I like the book, and I think the strongest part of the book is what I call vertical McDonaldization. And what he shows in that book is that McDonald's has the demands. McDonald's is so powerful, and its demands are so powerful that up the supply chain, it has led to the McDonaldization of the raising of cattle, the slaughtering of cattle, the butchering of cattle, the raising of potatoes, and on up the line. So everything that's involved in supplying McDonald's and the whole fast food industry, but McDonald's in particular, has had to McDonaldize itself. Now, he didn't put that in those terms. I used those terms when I originally reviewed his book, which I reviewed positively. So I think there are important points in that book. I mean, he looks at different things than I do, and was able, perhaps had funding to go out as a journalist and go to these places, go to meatpacking plants in Denver, and I think that's some of the most powerful parts of the book involve that, and it has a kind of updating of the jungle and the abuses that took place within the meatpacking industry. But the difference is that Schlosser is interested in the fast food industry, and he's not interested in generalizing beyond that. I'm only interested in the fast food industry to the degree that I can generalize about it. So I'm interested in the McDonaldization of society, not in McDonald's or not in fast food. For me, it's a lens into the larger society and the larger world. To him, it is the point of the book. And so they're very different books in that sense and many other senses.
You mentioned the movie that was recently made entitled Fast Food Nation. Do you think the same might happen for McDonaldization?
No. I think that I've had several overtures over the years to do documentaries about McDonaldization, and for one reason or another, none of them ever came off. And I don't know how one would turn the McDonaldization of society into a movie. Fast Food Nation, at least part of the book, I mean, after all, they only take a very small part of the book, and that has having to do with the meatpacking industry. They could see how they might have turned that into an effective movie. They didn't, but they could have seen how they could. I think you can make a good documentary about the McDonaldization of society, and it's showing McMansions and mega churches and hospitals and all kinds of settings, and showing the way in which they have been McDonaldized. But I don't think it would make a good movie, and I don't know, Tom Cruise would probably want too much money to star as me.
To star as you. I thought Tom Cruise would star as me. It was the hope.